Hello and welcome to another episode of the AgNext Podcast, where we are always excited to tell you what's next from AgNext. Today we will be speaking with doctoral candidate Ashley Schilling-Hazlett. Let's get into it. Ash, it's so nice to have you on the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you're graduating soon. We're calling you a doctoral candidate. But it is May 4th today, and you graduate on the 16th, and you will be officially Dr. Schilling-Hazlett.
Yes, I will.
Congratulations. That's a huge achievement. Huge achievement.
Okay, to start off with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like how you got to this point, how you came to AgNext, and a little bit about your research.
Yeah. So I grew up here in Timnath, Colorado, just east of Fort Collins, and I would say I have a non-traditional agriculture background. I grew up raising livestock in 4-H and then was really interested in learning more about agricultural systems and came to CSU for my undergrad. When I was about to graduate my undergrad, I had the opportunity to meet Kim, and at that time I thought I wanted to be an extension agent and stay in my home county and run a 4-H program. And I thought that was kind of the role that I wanted to take, which we laugh about now, but I feel like I have drawn on some of those experiences throughout graduate school. But as I got into working with AgNext, I just realized that my reach maybe could be further than just my local community, and that the research we were doing and being so close to that development phase and discovery really kind of sparked my curiosity, and I realized that I actually liked research a little bit more than I ever thought I would, and that actually led me to do my Ph.D. with Kim after my master's, and then I'm here graduating.
Actually, walk us through the research that you've completed, and go ahead and start with your master's, right? Walk us through your research journey, and then if you feel so inclined, add what you're excited about researching next.
Yes. During my master's, I did more research in dairy systems and extensive grazing systems. My main project was looking at methane mitigation in an organic dairy system with developing heifers. So I fed a tannin and looked at the dose response of different doses of this tannin extract on methane emissions and growth performance in growing heifers. We did not see an impact on methane, but we also didn't see an impact on growth performance. Those heifers still continued to grow regardless of the dose. So not necessarily a win-win, but also introduced me to this space where, you're going to research things and they don't always work out, but that's still a research observation and important for industry to know. And then I'll say it's a passion project, but it was a pilot study that led to a lot of other research that AgNext has done in an extensive grazing system, working with USDA ARS at the Central Plains Experiment Range. And we looked at how do animals coming from different sources, so different places of origin, what's the difference when they're commonly grazed in a stalker phase on methane and growth performance? And that kind of folded into many more projects in the future, but mine was the really basic one, which was, is there a difference? And there was. We saw that animals that were locally of local origin, so were grazing in the same place that they were born, actually had greater growth performance, greater emissions, but when you looked at emissions intensity, they produced less methane per unit of beef that they actually produced during that stalker phase. So that was a really cool step into the grazing systems where I realized you have not a lot of control over all the things that you're measuring. They're very complex.
And Ash, you're right. That was the pilot data for now. We've repeated that experiment. We repeated it twice. It resulted in a significant grant that we won. And I think we've had 2 or 3 publications following that pilot data. So really instrumental in sort of setting up the grazing program and our partnership with the Central Plains Experimental Range at that methane experiment level. So it was really important work.
Yeah. And it showed me, I think as a student, your research isn't just a peer-reviewed publication. We did many field days also with the producers that brought their steers into that experiment. So there were a lot of I think co-benefits to research that I was exposed to, that I was like, oh, I'm not just a graduate student sitting in my cubicle in the basement writing. I actually got to get out and interact with industry and our partners, which was really cool. And then stepping into my Ph.D., I kind of did a 180 and went into confinement where I had more control over everything. But in that research, we looked at the difference in enteric methane emissions, performance, and carcass characteristics of Bos indicus and Bos taurus steers managed with and without growth-promoting technologies in summer and winter feedlot conditions. So a lot of moving parts to that project, but essentially we looked at the Bos indicus breed was Brahman, and then the Bos taurus breed was an Angus type steer, and we treated half of them with the growth-promoting technologies, half of them without, and then we did our measurements using the green feed, smart feeds, body weights, all of that over those 2 seasons.
And your final project?
Oh, yes. And then I stepped into the modeling world just to have some more excitement in my life. And in that project, I looked at, we have all these different equations that we can use to estimate methane. And in the NRC, the beef NRC, they suggest that if you used a combination of equations, it might reduce some of the variation that you get when using a single equation. But I couldn't find anything that said these are the equations you should use, or that approach actually had been checked before and actually worked. So what our group did is we evaluated 66 different single equations and then aggregated them into the best performing model, the top 3, top 25%, 50%. And then we looked at the variation in the actual estimate of methane compared to what we observed. So that was my last project. And then our hope is to continue that further and say, okay, we might not have significant differences in the estimate that we're getting compared to observed, but could we still see differences in the total carbon footprint using that estimate? Because that has other supply chain implications. So that's kind of where that work is going next.
Good. So a huge breadth of research topics. Clearly that was informed by where you wanted to go, what kind of influence you wanted to have. What kind of influence could your research have on the industry, and why did you pick such a variation in the research that you did?
Yeah, I think I'll start with approaching that question from as a student perspective, why I think those projects really fit me. Initially, I wanted to go into industry and run corporate programs and work eventually as a CSO, Chief Sustainability Officer. And I really wanted to be able to understand kind of the challenges and opportunities of each segment, but then the tools that were also available for people to use in industry. So I think that's why I had almost every phase. Cow-calf, I did a couple of projects just helping other graduate students in, but I think that breadth was intentional from my advisor's standpoint to really provide me with I'm going to say critical lens of how to further develop different tools for each segment and when to say that's not going to work, or how do you know that's going to work? But with all of those different research projects, they were all co-developed with industry, which I think also from a student perspective showed me how invested industry is in what AgNext is doing and in just that phase of discovery. So I think that's really important as well. The influence that I specifically want to have, I think has evolved in my time at AgNext. I have mentioned that being part of discovery, and I'm very curious about kind of what's next. I think that's led me to want to stay involved in research a little more than maybe I would be able to in that CSO position. So I think my next step is going to be to continue research, develop those skills, and then maybe eventually step into the supply chain in a different capacity.
Quick question. Again, your breadth of research is different than a lot of graduate students, right? And so I think you have a unique perspective on the industry as a whole. And so as we start to think about what's next, what do you think are some really important steps that we need to take from the research side, right, to get industry to where they want to go, where we need them to go? Are there specific sectors? Are there different tools? Like what I'm curious what you think we should be focusing on as we move forward.
Yeah, that's the golden question. I feel like if I had the answer exactly to that, maybe I'd be really rich right now. But I think as I've been in this program for the past 5 years doing my master's and then my Ph.D., I see that grazing is still this black hole, I'll say. Like there's a lot of unknowns around grazing. And I think that's just in nature, grazing is really hard. And we have a challenge in measuring intake and grazing, and then understanding emissions becomes even more challenging when we can't measure intake or be able to quantify things in different ways. So I would say if I were to do one thing and get really good at one thing, measuring intake and grazing environments could be a game changer. Now, from a confinement standpoint, I think AgNext has developed one of the best research facilities to be able to measure animals in confinement. And the data that we've acquired just in the time that I've been here it blows my mind. Over 2,500 animals measured with paired performance data and methane emissions. There's so many questions that our team can ask every single day to be able to understand some of the challenges and opportunities in that space. And I think methane mitigation strategies in confinement, we can actually start to answer some questions about like adding fat, different inhibitors, those types of things in confinement. But I think the biggest opportunity for our supply chain as a whole is still in grazing.
What advice would you have for students entering AgNext? So an incoming master's or PhD student?
I think that's a great question. When I first started, I feel like I didn't even have to look for an advisor. I felt like my advisor found me, which was really awesome. We just had a meeting and she told me that what I wanted to do in the future was not what I was going to do. And I had a crisis. But I think something that was really important in that first discussion I had with my advisor, who is Kim, was that she believed in me more than I believed in myself at that point in time, which I think is huge. But I think as a student, she also taught me to care just as much, or if not more, about the quality of research I was doing, because it had further implications than just my thesis. And I think she's really helped me it feels weird talking about her while she's right here, but she really helped me to show that like the people who have invested in this research really do care about the outcomes, and we need to have scientific rigor in all of our research projects. We need to do them ethically, but you also have to be very intentional and understand the pushes and pulls and like critically think about your outcomes to provide the answers that we all need. So I think that would be one piece of advice, is that the student needs to really be intentional about how they're conducting their research, how they're interacting with their advisor. But I also think just caring, like this is a higher degree, like you earn it if you do it correctly, I think. So you need to invest in yourself just as much as your advisor is, if not more.
To build on that a little bit, even taking a step farther back. So back in the days when you're going to be the 4-H agent, which I salute you for that potential decision. We need all those people out there.
She can still be a 4-H leader.
She still can and probably will be. But I think, what would you say to students that are either considering graduate school, here or somewhere else, or those in a master's program that are considering whether or not to take that leap to a PhD program? Like what are your thoughts having gone through that, and how you evolved in the 5 years you've been in? Well, just some advice for those students out there.
Yeah. I think the things that I initially love, so I did a lot of internships with Extension, and I felt like I was really good at that. it filled my cup. I'm an achiever with my strengths. So checking things off, being productive, all those things fill my cup. And I think what I realized was that there are other jobs that allow you to leverage your strengths, and you don't have to isolate yourself to a specific job right out of the gate. I thought after I graduated undergrad, I needed to know exactly what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I feel like I told myself that enough to where I was like, no, I'm going to be an extension agent, which is a very humble, I will say. They work their butts off and do great work. But I feel like I do that in the job that I'm doing today at the same time. We still look at those kind of 3 different domains of a land-grant institution, and I'm still getting to do extension work just in a different way, and I'm still able to use those strengths. So I would say for students who are like questioning whether they should go to grad school or not, like, it's okay to take a leap and try something new and not confine yourself right away. But if you want to go into industry, that's great. There's all sorts of different paths. You can always come back too. But I think that was like my biggest challenge, was I thought I needed to know exactly what I wanted to do. And that's really not the case. I mean, I change my mind every day that I want to research something new. That's why Kim's a great boss. She keeps you on track and delivering when you have a bunch of big ideas.
To be fair, I'm not sure I know what I want to do yet, so I'm with you. I'm
Good.
in your boat.
That's why Kim's our boss.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Ashley, you have been an absolute pleasure to have as a graduate student and as a guest on our AgNext podcast. Thank you for coming to spend some time with us. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the AgNext podcast, where we are always excited to tell you what is next from AgNext. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and Instagram. For feedback or suggestions, email us at agnext.colostate.edu.